What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical average American here today to react and learn about banking in Britain versus the United States, and more specifically, how some of the banking and finance terminology is very different between British culture and American culture. It's kind of funny because I've learned about different words and phrases that are common in British culture that don't exist in American culture, but nothing this serious, I guess you could say. Like, if an American visits the UK and accidentally says pants instead of trousers, everyone kind of chuckles and is like, "Oh, you silly American, you don't know what's going on." But if you if you go to the UK and you don't know how to talk about banking information, like you're visiting a bank or trying to do something with money, and you don't know the proper terms and how different it is, that could actually be a big problem. Like, that could actually be kind of a serious problem. So it's kind of funny, and I'm a bit excited because I feel like this is a little more educational than the typical kinds of words and phrases. This is about banking and money, and it's also very interesting. So with that being said, let's take a look.
Perhaps the first thing that I noticed after opening my first US bank account is that a transactional account, that is an account where my earnings would be sent to once I was eligible to work, had an entirely different name to what we used in Britain.
Oh, you know what else is good to point out about this? I really like is that this gentleman is born and raised in the UK and has traveled and now lives in the United States. So he has like a very, very unique, very interesting perspective on having to learn about all the differences between UK and American culture by actually living it. So this is like his experience kind of learning about the American banking system. So I actually like that. That's really relatable, honestly.
To once I was eligible to work, had an entirely different name to what we used in Britain. You see, in Britain, this is usually known as a current account. And
a current account. I have never in my life heard of a current account. I'm actually surprised. Like, you'd think, just with all the media and internet stuff and shows, TV shows, pop culture, that Americans, what little Americans do get exposed to of British culture, some of these terms, like, would show up, but I've never... A current account? Why is it called a current account? I'm trying to think. Because in the United States, it'd be a checking account. The account you, like, have money in your bank. That's where you're actively pulling money out of to pay for things.
Name to what we used in Britain. You see, in Britain, this is usually known as a current account.
Okay.
And that's not because we use fruit as currency anymore. It's called current account because I don't actually know why. It's called current account.
Oh, I just understood Was he making a joke? Because black currant is a fruit. That is not a good joke for Americans. That was almost completely lost on me. Is he making a joke, or am I just desperately trying to use black currants, like, properly?
It's called current account because I don't actually know why. It's called current account because goods and services are generally consumed in the current period. Whereas in the...
I mean, if we're being honest, I'm not sure. That probably makes more sense. Like, why is it called a checking account? Checkings account in the United States. Checkings. Banks have checks? We don't really use checks anymore. Maybe because you're always checking it to see how much money you have. Okay, I'll stop. Very bad joke.
United States, such an account is called a checking account because, again, I don't know why. Let's have a look. They're called checking accounts because traditionally they offer you the ability to write paper checks.
Oh, it does have to do with checks. Oh man, no one really does that anymore. Yeah, no one does that.
There's a reason I was confused by that, but we'll get onto that in a bit.
Oh, yeah, I'm confused too. I don't know why it's called a checking account here, and I don't know why it'd be called a current account. Although he was saying that's because the money you're currently using, that almost makes some sense at least.
Before then, here's this.
But like I was saying, this is so like important to know if you're traveling between our cultures, between British and American culture. Like, I would have had no idea in a British bank what something very commonly used in Britain is a current account. I would have had no idea what on earth we were talking about. Bellwether stock? Bellwether stock.
America loves the word bellwether. In politics, you might have a bellwether state whose election results might be a reasonable forecast of the national outcome.
Okay, this is funny because this is supposed to be the American terminology. I don't know if this has something to do with where in the United States you live, or if I'm just financially illiterate. I don't feel like I'm that uneducated in banking and finance, but I've never heard of a bellwether.
And in banking terminology, it turns out there's such a term as bellwether stock. And bellwether stock is a type of stock that can forecast the direction of sort of any sector, industry, or financial market. So an example of...
I mean, I believe him. This is just some kind of finance term I've never heard of, even as an American.
This in the United States would be JP Morgan Chase. But in Britain, and I only learned this after leaving because, you know, I'm not a financial expert, bellwether stock is known similarly as barometer stock. And so the funny thing is, a barometer is used to forecast the weather. Do you see the metaphor there? And that makes it consistent with newspaper headlines that refer to recessions as the incoming storm. It's beautiful symmetry, and I love it. And that's not to say that I understand what's going on in the financial world.
I was about to say, like, I'm a bit lost here. These are both finance terms that have to do with being able to forecast the future for stocks in other financial sectors, I guess. Not something that we really normally encounter in day-to-day American or British life, really. Maybe like American accountants or finance experts know this bellwether thing, but I would not say it's like a common American banking terminology.
As a matter of fact, I'm quite clueless. Thank goodness then for these guys. This video is sponsored by...
Oh, this is a little sponsored segment I'm gonna skip. Okay, next is check.
Now, remember a few minutes ago when I was confused about this? They're called checking accounts because traditionally they offer you the ability to write paper checks. There's a reason I was confused by that, but we'll get onto that in a bit.
Oh, okay.
Yep, it turns out that sometimes it's not just the terminology that's different, but the spelling. Here's the thing, even to this day I have to consult my spell check to remember how Americans spell check.
Wait, we spell check weird? C-H-E-C-K? Is there another way to spell it? Maybe with like a Q or something? If I'm forced to think about this, what's the British spelling?
And that's because typically it is different to what I learned growing up in Britain, where we opted for a kind of French spelling of C-H-E-Q-U-E.
Oh, yeah, see, I tend to lean towards the American spelling of check. I'm a little biased here, but it's very straightforward. Check. Kind of spelled, I can really lay into how it's spelled. Check. This is like chukwe, chaukwa. Like if I didn't know any better. Check with a Q. All right, very fancy, very French. Okay.
Is that right? It sounds right. I need spell check again. And in America, it is C-H-E-C-K.
Yeah.
Now, us Brits, we don't really lose sleep over things like this. But if we were to, we might ask the question, why did America change the spelling? And the truth of the matter is, they didn't. The original English spelling of check was precisely what Americans use today, C-H-E-C-K. But then came along a right banker, and again, that isn't rhyming slang. He really was a banker. His name was James William Gilbert. And in the 19th century, after Britain and America had both long agreed on the spelling of check, decided he wanted to spell it the French way.
Oh, this is just some random, very, very random historical event that happened in Britain. I guess after the United States became independent, then Britain decided, because of this guy, to spell check. Kind of funny. Okay.
So as to differentiate it from other meanings of the word check, as in, check your spellings, Lawrence.
Oh, it's like spelled in a unique way to differentiate it as a finance term. Check. I actually don't hate that idea, but as an American, I think I also prefer our simple little way of spelling it.
And the fact of the matter is, America's dictionary extraordinaire, Noah Webster, didn't change the spelling of Czech because he didn't know to. It was lost in the pond.
Oh.
You know, it would solve everything if both countries just built a massive bridge across the Atlantic. Oh, and speaking of bridge... Okay.
Bridge loan. Oh gosh. This sounds like something I feel like I should know about. A bridge loan.
So here's a scenario, not based on anything factual. Let's say you take out a short-term loan, or 7, and you do so with the aim of building toward long-term financing.
Okay.
In Britain, this is known as a bridging loan. And the
Okay.
same idea exists in the United States of America, I'm told. Except here, the...
Oh, I'm curious as to what this is called in the United States and if I recognize it. But I also, at this point, I feel like this video is just teaching me about finance in general, not even about British culture.
The name that's given to such a loan is slightly different. It's called a bridge loan.
Okay.
And if you've ever seen my video, Britain's bridges ain't got nothing on America, you'll know that this is a rare instance of an American bridge being shorter than its British counterpart.
Bridge loan. I mean, I've heard about some different types of loans as an American, like certain loans you take out for your business or your house, but I have to say I've never heard of a bridge loan. I think again that's kind of an obscure, possibly American only finance terminology, banking term, but not very common. I think a lot of Americans wouldn't know that one either. Maybe it's just me. I'm starting to feel a bit insecure. I didn't know what bellwether or bridge loan was. And that's supposed to be the American term.
Well, what do you know? It turns out that barometer and bellwether stock were just forecasts for different British versus American banking words to
Okay.
do with stock.
Okay.
In Britain, we have this thing called ordinary share. And this is a type of share or stock that gives the stockholder certain rights to share in company profits and to get a say in the makeup of a board of directors.
Okay, an ordinary share. That is definitely a very British term. I've not heard that before. I think he's talking about stocks, okay, this I probably know of.
In America, this is known as common stock.
Common stock. Okay, yes, I am familiar with that. Common stock versus...
It's to share in company profit, a type of share to do with stock. In Britain, we have this thing called ordinary share.
Ordinary... That's very funny because ordinary share is almost exactly like common stock. You just switch out the words, like instead of ordinary, it's common. They mean the same thing, and then share and stock are the same thing. That's funny. That's actually kind of funny. Huh. It's almost like completely unnecessary that we call it different things, but I feel like at this point, it's not going to change.
Company profits, and to get a say in the makeup of a board of directors. In America, this is known as common stock.
Yes.
And this is quite interesting because the words common and ordinary can be used to mean the same thing in other circumstances.
Yes.
But you know, how many of us can really say that we partake in something like this? How about we finish today's list with 2 entries that affect almost everyone?
Okay. ATM.
You know,
okay, ATM. Is there something different about ATMs in British culture than American? That would surprise me. Or are they called different things?
Most of the time, I just want to get my cash without speaking to actual people. And thank goodness then for the cash machine. Or at least that's how I used to refer to the wall device that deposits money when I lived in Britain. Other people back home might
Wait, cash machine?
refer to it as a cash point or a hole in the wall, which
Oh, wait. Hole in the wall. Cash point. Cash machine. These are... I honestly like these. These are all words for what we Americans call an ATM. That machine that you go up to and get money out of. I like the British words. They're a little funny to me because they're so on the nose. Like, we have this acronym. I guess it's for automatic teller machine, ATM. But a cash machine is like more literal. It's exactly what it is. It's a machine with cash.
I lived in Britain. Other people back home might refer to it as a cash point or a hole in the wall, which
Okay.
also means toilet. That was just a Grimsby thing. Right. But in most of the United States, it's quite rare to hear the term cash machine.
Yeah.
For the most part, Americans just refer to this as ATM.
Oh yeah, this one is absolutely true. And very, very common. This is like probably the most relevant term so far in this video. ATM, everyone in the United States says ATM. Cash machine, I might know what you mean. I'd be like, do you mean an ATM? Like, I'd be able to figure it out, but it's very literal, a cash machine.
Which stands for at the moment. Did you get that off Urban Dictionary? No, it stands for automated teller machine.
Yeah.
And here's an interesting piece of trivia about ATMs. Despite America's dominant economic role in 20th century world affairs, the world's very first ATM, or cash machine, was opened in London in 1967.
1967. Man, 70 years ago. And it was in London. I would not have necessarily assumed the first ATM was in the United States, so I'm not shocked by this.
A full 2 years before America followed suit.
Wow.
Of course, I suppose the real question is, what precisely do we call those bits of monetary paper that cash machines actually dispense?
What?
As ever, Britain and America can't agree.
Wait, we call money different stuff? What does he mean?
That's
Bills. Yeah, bills. Like a money you could call like a $20 bill or a bill. Okay, that's not the same in Britain.
right. America calls them bills, as in Bill, the builder, pays his bills with bills. See how this is confusing?
Yeah,
Whereas in
I
Britain, we
guess.
usually refer to these as banknotes or simply notes.
Oh, notes, banknotes. Man, I guess in America we would know what you're talking about. That's very formal, very fancy sort of language. A banknote, I know what that is. Like, that's not unheard of. It's a little over the top. A note, it's just a bit formal. Most people would say a bill. Even that's kind of formal, because usually you're just saying like, oh, give me $20, give me $20. But a bill and notes. Okay, this actually makes sense to me. I didn't know that it was more commonly called notes in Britain. That's actually good to know.
And so, owing to this word difference, I would like to bring to your attention a sentence that sums this up nicely. In America, restaurant goers pay the check with bills, and in Britain, they pay the bill with checks.
Okay, I mean, that is a funny sentence, but I don't mean to be like a Mr. Contrarian here or anything, but in America, we would call that thing you get at the end of your meal, it could be a check or a bill. Yeah, we say, can I have the check or can I have the bill? So, although it's more fun what he said.
I don't think people use checks anymore, but, you know, in the 20th century, that was hilarious.
Oh, yes, and he's talking about checks, as in the American check, which is an old piece of paper you used to write down how much money you want to give people, and yes, people don't really use checks anymore, thank goodness.
That's it for this episode. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever used a bank, and if you've ever been confused by some of its pan-Atlantic terminology.
I'm a bit confused still right now over some of this, like the bridging loans and the bellwether. But on the whole, this video was really, really fun and really educational and good. This was by Lost in the Pond, and I liked it. There's actually a lot of really fascinating differences. Yeah, the checking account and the current account. That's a big one. That was interesting. What else did we have here? The common stock and the ordinary... Oh, what was it? I don't even know, but it was ordinary something, and that one was kind of funny. The ATM versus the cash machine and hole in the wall, that's a big one. There's actually quite a few substantial differences between what we call things in British culture versus American culture, so this was actually really educational and fun to learn about, so I enjoyed this quite a bit. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to British culture and stuff about Britain that I've never seen before or learned about, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.